the musical suggestion. Tribe Called Red is
Mm-hmm.
awesome. So everybody who's been in, that's what we've been listening to, various tracks. Right now we have Brown Skin Girl. There was one track I was kind of surprised about. I think it was The Virus with Saul Williams, one of my favorite poet slash lyricists. So he's been around for a while. So for those musical fanatics like myself, check out Tribe Called Red. All right. Well, it is about that time. We're going to get started. So I want to thank you all for joining us this evening. And I'm going to turn my headphones off here so I'm not listening to myself. We deeply appreciate the time and contributions of the presenters and everyone joining us tonight for this evening of Maada'oonidiwag sharing. As the evening progresses, feel free to share your stories and experiences. Key people joining us this evening are Katie, Kathy, with some sharing from Mama Raven and Baba Kundaja on this end, and Ajay Weatherspoon, and of course all of you. Everyone here tonight is important, and definitely chime in and feel free to share. Our supporting groups for this ongoing cultural and environmental exchange are Dynamite Hills Farms, Southwest Groves, the National Wildlife Federation, Detroit Outdoors, the Sierra Club, Keep Growing Detroit, Black to the Land Coalition, YMCA of Metro Detroit, and the Parks and Rec Department of Detroit. Let's see, the series of gatherings and cultural exchanges has received primary funding from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation in an effort to promote healthy communities. A couple notes tonight with everyone before we get started. We will keep attendees muted for most of the presentation, but we do encourage you to share in the chat room. When possible, we will, interrupt and interject those questions. And if the process and time allows, we'll try to take attendees off mute so everyone can bring their voices into the conversation. This event is being recorded so that more people can benefit from this evening. So if you have any issues with being on camera, just keep your camera muted. And let's see, if you have any other issues, just reach out and touch us and we'll see what we can do there. Lastly, we will have a flexible schedule this evening. We hope that you can stay with us for the program in its entirety. However, if you have to step away, log off and do anything, feel free and maybe log back in. This event will be available in a few weeks or in upcoming weeks. So check for it in its recorded form. Once we get it, we will share it. And Adawan Zoda, let's go looking for berries. I'm going to turn this over and let's see. Katie, feel free to chime in, or better yet, let's start with Ajay, and then let's go to maybe Baba Kundaja and Mama Raven, if you guys want to shout out a little bit.
Well, hi, folks. My name is Ajay Weatherspoon. I'm an education specialist with the Detroit Zoological Society. And in my role there, I was actually the coordinator for the environmental stewardship internship. So that's my love child. That's my baby. It's an internship for 16 and 19-year-olds in the Detroit area who are just looking for some job readiness support. So in the program, not only are they learning about nature and kind of building those connections with nature, they're also learning skills that's going to help them in the environmental field as well as in any job setting. So they're learning how to build the resume, how to count the rings on the tree, how to identify species, how to ace an interview. So all of that, so they can go out in the world and get jobs that they want. And also, especially in the environmental field, so where they might not see a lot of representation as far as ethnicity and gender goes, but now they are a little bit more comfortable and a little bit more empowered to go into these careers. So within the program, we do an annual camping trip, and we camp at Scout Hollow. And we've been there, I want to say about 3 years now or so. And particularly this last summer that we were there, the interns were learning their camping 101, which they usually do with Garrett and Chris. And they learn how to pitch tents, how to safely pack it up, and make sure that the gear can, survive for another group. And in this particular location, there was a mulberry tree that has always been there. But for some reason, the interns were really fascinated with it. So, Garrett, if you want to show a few photos.
You know what, Ajay? I'm actually going to ask you to pause if you don't mind,
Okay.
and we're going to leave the audience sort of hanging for a little bit longer.
All right.
I think we'll get everybody to do their introductions, and then we're going to come back to
Okay.
sharing some of those pictures.
Okay.
That was a great cliffhanger. It's
Yes,
good foreshadowing.
Right. Thanks for chiming in, Garrett. Kundaja, just a quick introduction so people can see who your face, is or.
All right, peace everybody. My name is Kundaja Green, Baba Kundaja in the community is what I'm called. I've been an educator in many different capacities for probably the last 20 years as a teacher, IT administrator, and also in the community. Particularly, I am a urban gardening specialist and plant identification specialist as well. I've run urban gardening programs for youth in the past, and also currently with the help of Baba Mudu, we are co-founders of Sons of Haru, Rites of Passage for Black male youth here in Detroit area. And one of the things that we're very strong on is food security. So everything from getting the students to reconnect with the land by learning, plant identification and medicinal uses of plants, to the more deeper spiritual aspects of what it means to connect with the earth, that's around you. So I love to learn about, the environment, the earth. I've studied plant science and medicinal medicines in, United States, obviously, and also in Ghana, and most recently, a couple of years ago, in Peru. So I have a continuing love for doing this. And as I said at the beginning, I'm just here to learn and to share. Bob Chris asked me if I had any specific experiences with, the berries that I would like to share. So I said I did. So that's one of the reasons I'm happy to be able to present. When we, I guess, come back around, I will get to, specific instances where, the plants have spoken to me, so to speak.
Thank you for that, Baba Kundaja, and thanks again for joining us. We appreciate it.
You're welcome.
And I just want to give folks a little heads up. Mama Raven will introduce herself next, but she and I have been rehearsing our little sort of video Zoom dance that we're doing. I just want to say I'm about to put her video on mute so that her audio comes through more clearly. I don't want you all to think we're like disrespecting Mama Raven and putting her on mute just when she starts to introduce herself. But we're switching back and forth when she is sharing. So I'm going to put the video on mute, Mama Raven, so you can introduce yourself now, okay?
Okay.
There you go.
Greetings all, and thank you for allowing me to share this opportunity with you. I'm affectionately called Mama Raven. My name is Regina Lawson. Basically, my journey has been that of my lifestyle, dating back to the 50s, actually 1950s. Learning from my grandmother about dandelions. So that's been my journey. It's all about the dandelions, and I started teaching people about things that they can actually harvest from their backyards, edible, medicinal, and survival purposes. And also my grandfather, he also taught me, he was a Cherokee Indian, and he also taught me a lot of things about the outdoors, and that's when my journey started. And so as the years have gone along, I've been trying to help other people in my community, which is on the riverfront, and that's where I was born, and I'm still there now, in the wetlands, and showing them how to discover different plants and trees and all kinds of things that they can actually eat and use for medicinal purposes and to survive by. And so this journey has been really interesting. It's just a lifestyle. I haven't had any education on it other than from my grandparents. and it's just stuck with me, and that's the lifestyle I've lived. I am the inventor of the herbal healing huts, herbal walk and talk and chat and chew, and I'm a vegan chef as well. And so I take on mentees, 4 mentees a year, and I train them to do the things that I was taught by my grandparents. So that's been my journey. I'm a member of the Sierra Club, and I've done a lot of things with them, and that's where I met Eric, as a matter of fact. So I've traveled around Detroit doing a lot of herbal walks and a lot of cooking for different people that want to learn how to improve their lifestyle as far as eating and to enhance their health. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for sharing, Mama Raven. We had a couple technical difficulties here. And let's go ahead and pass the mic over to Katie and or Jerry. Hey, Jerry, I see you there. In the truck again. Hey, Katie.
Can you guys hear us?
Yes.
Yes.
Nanine. So Jerry, I don't know if you're on a time crunch, if you want to jump in first so that you can kind of introduce yourself really quickly in case we lose you.
Yes. Can you guys hear me? Yeah? Okay.
Yeah.
So crazy again. Here we are doing the Zoom conference, and I'm out on fire again. Actually coming to you from California as well. So we're actually stationed in the San Bernardino National Forest right now, and we're doing initial attack, supporting the local agency here. Thank goodness nothing is broken yet. So we're just kind of on standby until something gets up and running, and then we're on it. So yeah, so Buju Gidigabaju and Indigenikas Ajijakan Dudam, we Kweidong Kidojabano Ojibwe Nishnabe Nini and Dao. So my name is Jerry Jandro. I come from the Keweenaw Bay Indian Community, part of Dynamite Hill Farms, where we are currently looking to get back to the land. I spend a lot of my time in the natural resources fields. I have a degree in forestry. I started the first tribal forestry program on our reservation. And then after that, I went to work at Michigan Tech in the School of Forest Resources and Environmental Science, trying to advocate for different perspectives within the natural resources fields and profession. And now we are back on the land, I guess. And I think that's been what I've been trying to do all along, really. I just haven't been afforded the opportunity to do that in the capacities that I've worked in previously, which kind of doesn't make any sense because I'm in forestry, right? You think I'd be able to be doing these things and working for a natural resources institution, but neither one of those institutions really understood an Ojibwe perspective or the Ojibwe needs and time to be on the land. And so as of last September, I resigned from Michigan Tech, and Katie and I have gone full-time in on Dynamite Hill Farms, where we're actually allowing ourselves the time and space to get back to the land because, you know, what we're trying to do is definitely centered around food, but there's so much more to it. We have ceremony that's associated with all those foods. We have language, we have responsibilities, and it takes a long time to actually fulfill those obligations. And in mainstream society, we're never really given the time to do that. So we're getting back to the land. We're getting back to our responsibilities to care for the place that so that it can continue to care for us, not in a top-down approach where humans are at the apex, but more of like a level playing field where, you know, we're all on equal footing and we all have our own responsibilities and sharing this responsibility to each other, and that includes other human beings. I think I'll leave my introduction there, and if there's anything else that I need to to jump in and say, then I'll try to do that without being too distracting. I might have to like up and run too if we get a call. So just so you know, miigwech.
All right. Thank you, Jerry. All right, Katie.
All right. Bonjour,
Bonjour.
can you hear us all right? Good? Good.
Yes.
Mang dote Miss Kabekang and Dunjuba. Makunta Banya Baban and Shnabi when a cause or by means as the Guinico Indish Nakas. What the Emma Miss Kabekang when Jabangoma Bishungo Minisink Miss Oga Jana no Kian Venus Shago Anjako Akea Ma Bique Dongashinakatic. Miso Nijake Huma Ayaga Win, Winata Maiba, Wita Shintan Gabu, Miso Uno de Bajama and Nenu and Gagwe, then Dajin Daman, Uno de Bajamo and Dajin Jagadek and then Yumina Nago, Miss Kumin and Me Akinagago, Miso O Wenji Ayaka Oma. Mirenji Dajin Damang Mirenji Maada'oonidiwag Miso Kidwin got issue with the young ma. Miigwech RPG Gabeta Kushin make business to make a Kinegego I am Kuma the Megotre our Winuaga Kina Dewad Winuasago Inu de Bajmawanan Agai. So, hello, Anin, bonjour. My name is Katie Brissette. I'm a Loon Clan member from the Red Cliff Band of Lake Superior, Ojibwe. I am myself now living here in Michigan, but originally I'm over from the Red Cliff Band, over in northern Wisconsin, and that's where I was born and raised. I was raised on the lake shore, near the islands, on Lake Superior, and often, and I don't know, if there's anyone here who's been able to share our stories before, but we are now sharing again. This is the second time we've had the opportunity to kind of share some stories with people around. That's part of what I was kind of introducing myself when I was speaking. I was told a long time ago, it's so important to use the language. One, it keeps that language alive, right? It keeps the Maada'oonidiwag or the spirits or the beings that live in this place. They can recognize that language and they can hear us when we're talking, and so they know then that we're addressing them directly, and they know then that we're here, what it is we're here to do and why we've gathered. And so for us, it's really important to first do those acknowledgements and really recognize where we are in this place. I was kind of sharing a little bit with you all to, kind of share our own personal intentions as to why we're bringing these stories together. I think it's so important. And this has been a beautiful and ongoing conversation between ourselves here in the community, here at Dynamite Hill Farms, our wonderful co-hosts down south with you all, and the projects that we've been working on up until this point. This idea of sharing stories again, and sharing stories on a platform. Unfortunately, we have to do it on this platform, right? And we don't all get to sit and visit with our friends and share our good stories. Lucky me, right? I get to be way up here, so I get to have that contact still. But as close as we can get to creating and developing these kinds of communities. We're in this space and time where that community, we all need to come back together. The biggest part of this conversation we've had is, divide and conquer means we're divided and still conquered, right? We're all sitting from these places and these stories that each of us hold in our hearts, the stories that each of us have carried back from, those older stories from our grandparents and our aunties and our uncles and our families. All of those stories that have walked forward with us, they come from, where our hearts lie. That's what, Jabwamwin, Wayne Jabayan, Unjabayan, where my heart comes from, where my soul was born and raised and bred, and where my feet have traveled, and what has filled and fed my spirit and my life, from the get-go. That existence has been here since long before my feet traveled on those shores and swam in those waters. And so for us, part of this whole conversation is to not only bring those stories forward to help share maybe some perspectives you know, from the land here itself directly, but also to bring forward the stories that now everyone who is in this place is carrying with them. We forget often, right? As Anishinaabe people, as Indigenous people, we have the blessing to be still walking with our feet in the lands that our grandmothers cared for us. And one of these biggest steps that I think we've been really looking forward to making is the idea that we are not the only ones who walk in these lands, and we are not the only ones who carry forward these stories. And there are so many of us now in this day and age who have the ability to start sewing and piecing together the bits and the stories, because all of us, again, right, have all had pieces of these stories taken away from us. We've all had parts of these stories that were either pushed away or taken away or torn away from either our families or ourselves. And part of stitching those stories back together includes me being able to share my story with you, but also being able to receive all of those beautiful stories that you all have as well. And so part of the intention behind, you know, why we're gathering in this way is to be able to open that conversation back up. And so I myself, you know, I'm just blessed and honored, and I wanted to say thank you. Part of what I was saying was saying thank you to our invited guests who came to share their stories, stories that are so relevant to you all and where your feet are placed now in this day, and also how blessed and honored we are to be able to share our stories and to start making these links and sewing these all together. And so that's part of kind of all of what I was saying. I'm gonna share a little bit about where I'm from as kind of an opening up for my part of the story. And after I do that, I'm going to introduce one of my good friends here, Kathy Smith. And she's going to share a piece of her story too. One of the things, the intentions behind why we want to share these stories is it's so important for people to remember that there are stories of this land that one still exists to this day, right? But are still being told and lived in that way. And so to set the tone or to kind of set the mood, to open up and to have the continuation of the story be brought forward, we like to share our stories that come from the original stories that come from this land first and foremost. And so that's kind of how we have it set up this evening. We're really looking forward to hearing from folks in the audience, and just really grateful that those of you who are able to join us are here to share your own experiences, whether it be, I think Mama Raven, you had said, you know, I first heard these stories with the dandelions, and we were sitting here and Kathy said, oh, that's just like our story too, right? Like that's how they start, right? That one time long ago when someone took the time to share their story with you, and you then took the time to learn the story from those dandelions or from those berries or from that which is around you, and how now we're at this time in which we can share those stories again, both with each other and ourselves and then our communities, and what those steps really look like as we walk forward. So just to kind of give you a little understanding about, you know, where I come from, I myself am an Anishinaabe woman. With that title comes a lot of descriptions that kind of guide my life, my choices, and what I'm doing. First and foremost, I'm an Ojibwe woman from Lake Superior, and I was born and raised in the Red Cliff Reservation, which is very close to the Apostle Islands. The islands themselves are a part of the National Lakeshore that has been put aside by the federal government for the purpose of all peoples to enjoy. And along with, you know, that land grab that had occurred in the early 1900s, 1930s, when the national parks were all kind of going up around the country, with those protections came a lot of restrictions, and the stories that I would have had to share with you as a young girl experiencing what berries and what that means as an Anishinaabe on that shoreline have been then restricted because of it. And so I wanted to kind of share a little bit of a picture with you and just kind of bring you back to a time that I was told about when I was just a little girl. Where we live, we have 22 different islands, and we used to be able to canoe or boat out to any of those given islands. Each of the families, each of the community families, we were fishermen, right? Like that's why we stayed on that lake, and we were fishing trout, and we were fishing whitefish, and we were doing gill nets, and our families were all really established in that form of both, you know, food, but then economic sustainability. And part of our season, part of our year was dedicated to what they called the fish camps. And so we would go to the islands themselves, and we would take the time to be on the islands, both out there for the fishing, right? The men would be out setting the gill nets and coming in on a regular basis. But part of what we would set up was a berry camp. And berry camp was very important. One, for the sustainability of the actual fishing. So the fish camp and the berry camp coincided with each other. But then two, in order for the families to stay out there regularly, part of being an Anishinaabe person is you're not just ever fishing, right? You're never just racing, you're never just getting meat. You are always living in that place and that time, and all the things that were happening around you, you were completely involved and indulging in at the same times. And so fortunately, where I come from, those islands, they used to be just full of berries, most particularly blueberries, and our community regularly would burn and do controlled fires, and we would burn regularly every year to have the berries come back. But we also then, in doing that, were able to live kind of symbiotically with the berries on those islands, and then the fish when they were in season, the summer fish that were in season, the medicines that were happening out there, and the fact that our families moved regularly. And so for me, that story was cut off by the time I was a little girl. So that was my grandma's stories about her time in the fish camps, and my uncles and my dad's, their stories about being little boys and going out on those long boat rides and riding out for days and staying for months at a time, you know, good long couple weeks, month and a half or so, staying that summertime through. And that story stopped with me, right? Like, and I saw a question on there. Someone had asked, you know, what is it? What is that reference of the land grabs? So there's lots of history that goes into, of course, you know, the colonization and settling of the United States of America, as it's so called, Maada'oonidiwag, as we would call it. And the reason why there is this disconnect between me as this young woman and my ability to access berries and be with the berries and the fish now, and then, you know, my father and my grandparents and their generation, is because during, of course, there's the treaty ceded territories where folks were actually ceding the territories off, and we were moving on to reservations, and that's a whole nother long conversation, and I'd love to talk more and have more responses to that. But there was also in the early 1900s, especially after, you know, Teddy Roosevelt and his efforts that were being made, the federal government made those big pushes for creating and developing national parks all across the country. And in that, a lot of tribal communities were very severely impacted and are still impacted today in terms of the federal government taking over specific lands. The lands that the federal government decided to protect over where I'm from is that whole entire southern shore of Lake Superior that spans all of Wisconsin there, and then all of the islands that we traditionally would have access as Anishinaabe people. There were a lot of restrictions and policies put in place because in a national park, you can't go off the trail, you can't have a campfire, you can't tent overnight, and all of those restrictions, though they are required by law to recognize treaty rights and our ability to access this land, often those were abused at the times, especially early on when that was happening. And a lot of our treaty rights were restricted, and we were unable to actually spend time out in these places, specifically because they restricted our access and what it meant to be an Anishinaabe living within your environment again. We can definitely go into more of those questions later. I just hope that kind of clarifies. I saw that pop up on there on the chat. So I wanted to kind of put that out there so people were thinking about that as we continue to talk about not only these stories, but, you know, the access to these stories. That's the big conversation we really want to keep having around this. I'm going to step back a little bit now, and I shared a little bit about who I am and where I'm from, and I'm going to hand it over. I'm so fortunate. This is one of our wonderful friends, Kathy Smith. She lives here in KBIC as a KBIC member. She's going to introduce herself and kind of share a little bit of her stories. She agreed to come sit with me, so like I get to don't talk as much, and Kathy gets to sit and take over. I'm really excited. So I'm going to.
Thank you for coming, Kathy.
Yeah, me great.
Much for that, Katie. I'm Bujun anyway, Maada'oonidiwag. Was no de Keweenaw Maingen Indo Dam. Mission. Yeah. Dung Hindunjaba. My name is Kathleen Smith. You can call me Kathy. I'm a KBIC enrolled member here. I'm also part of the KB Natural Resources Department. I'm the habitat specialist here for the tribe. I deal with I work with our plant relatives. So I do restoration for native plants, native pollinators and medicines. I also do wild rice restoration. We help promote food sovereignty with our community garden here, which is up and coming. We're also part of the Western UP Food Systems Council. That's part of Copper Country here, and we have so many partners in that aspect, which I can really get into, but for this year, I will share a little bit about my background, where Jerry Jondrew is right now. That's what kind of work I used to do. I was a wildland firefighter there in California. He's actually in my old stomping ground. I returned here to home probably about 7 years ago. I started making the journey here. The call to come home was about working with the plants, and Jerry's over there laughing at me. It's like, you better bring me back a carne asada burrito, though. That's all I got to say. And some sage. So anyways, I was going to a few of the powwows out there, and, you know, they have what they call Mission Indians out there, and they actually adopted a lot of our dances. So a lot of our dances with the jingle dress, the traditional dances, the fancy dances with the men and the women, they started doing that out there in California. And I would meet a lot of different people from all kinds of different walks of life. I was having some issues where I actually went to a Navajo man that I had known, and he had asked me, I was really not in a good way. I was having some issues, you know, with accepting how they actually play their drums. My daughter had an incident about how she was doing fancy dance where it was more accepted here than it was in California, even though they adopted some of our dances. And her spirit was really hurt in a way to where she was told not to dance a certain dance, which is the duck and dive, which the women here, the Keweenaw, also participate when they're asked to do that. She was getting ready to go dance, and she was told not to by somebody that had adopted our dances. And so when I went to this Dene man, he had given me some medicine to help my daughter, you know, in a good way. And he told me one thing. He goes, you need to go back and learn your own medicines. You need to go home and learn your own plants. So that began my journey to return to our homeland here, to where my ancestors have lived for a long time. I'm Keweenaw Bay Indian Community, you know, through my father's side. I'm Maingen from, I'm the Wolf Clan here. My mother, she's from the Red Lake Nation, and she had so many stories to share, you know, on top of, you know, my returning home. It really triggered a lot of good stories to share, which I've been away from for many years. Where Jerry is now, I spent about 17 years out there doing fire, you know, so there's a lot of urban interface, and, you know, you learn so many other plants, but it's not like home. You know, so once I traveled home, I was able to reconnect, you know, with the land here and understand, you know, that these stories are very important about, you know, who I am, who we are as Anishinaabe, you know, and upon that, there's a lot of responsibilities, you know, to carry these stories to help them get passed on to our children, you know, for the next 7 generations. But it's really, really a fine line when I have one foot in the world that Jerry has right now, and one foot here to be a traditional woman. So it's sometimes it's a fine line, you know, and when you come back home, oh my gosh, it was just been a rush, you know, to learn and to sit with the plant relatives every day and to watch them grow and to watch the berries grow, you know, and these stories come back to us. So it's just been a beautiful time. It's an honor here to introduce myself in this way in our language, you know, and I'm learning. I'm still learning as we go along. And what I have learned, you know, even though we all have different backgrounds, we all have different belief systems, and, you know, but that doesn't matter. You know, we all come from hunters and gatherers and people who have gathered medicines, you know, with all of our ancestors. So it's very important too to have this cultural barrier broken down. Mm-hmm. So within this community, I wear a lot of hats. I work with the youth also, and you know, with our partners, there are a lot of hesitation, you know, for when they come into our territory, because, you know, they don't know. And so I'm here to help educate and for people to kind of understand, you know, where I come from also, and to share these stories in a good way, you know, because I would love to learn from each and every one of you, you know, and hear your stories also, which is very important, you know, because one day we're not going to be here. And so who's going to be here to share the stories and to pass them down? You know, because, you know, with the climate change, I think that's what's happening right now, especially with our berries this year. And I think Katie and I will get into a little bit more of that later on, but miigwech for listening.
All right, miigwech, thank you for sharing. All right. So we'll keep going here, and I think it's still on you, Katie. Feel free to go with it and share, and you know, get it going.
Yeah. All right. Well, miigwech, we had some really cool. So part of what we wanted to kind of talk about a little bit today was just what it kind of looks like up here. Part of that is just to kind of make you guys a little jealous. I'm not gonna lie, like we got some pretty good stuff going up here, and the other part of it is so I can convince Chris and Garrett that they got to come back now because they already got a chance to come see us and they were not here for berries. So we wanted to share a couple little like videos with you guys. We were out, I wanted to kind of give you a visual of what it even just kind of looks like. We went up north on the peninsula, just yesterday. Actually, we got you fresh berries and fresh video, sharing a little bit of some of the what it kind of looks like for. We were hoping to be able to provide some more time with folks to actually spend time up here, and part of it is to invite and honor every other, you know, folks who are coming, get the chance to kind of come up and see what it actually looks like up this way. And so part of what it is, are we sharing it? No. Oh, okay. So part of what I wanted to show you guys is this is very similar. So this is not my home originally. I'm from the islands myself, but there's this beautiful space just up north, over north of Gay, Michigan, and the landscape there is very much like it looks like at home. It looks very much like it would if we were on the islands, actually being able to pick berries. So just pre-warning, you get a couple shots of some baby butt cheeks because my daughter believes in the freedom of natural existence, and so her little bum is on this on some of these videos. But so we'll put this on, and we're gonna share the screen and kind of let you see what we have here. And I think while we're doing that, I would ask if you would mind, Kathy, sharing one of your berry stories that you said your mom has with you, kind of for like some background sounds as we're talking.
Okay. So show the video and I'll click through some photos while Carrie talks.
Yeah, so because you can, guys, I think you guys, as we're screen sharing, you should be able to hear the mic. So we're gonna throw on the screen share real quick here, and I think can everyone see my daughter's bum? It looks like that. Okay, so there you go.
So my mother grew up in Red Lake Nation. She used to share stories with me, and she still does today. She talks about how when she used to be a young girl, you know, going out and picking berries, you know, going from patch to patch. But they didn't have, you know, much in life, you know, as we know it. But in reality, I think they had so much more. You know, when they used to go from patch to patch, you know, depending on what season, you know, the first season would be the ottoman, the strawberry, the heartberry. So they would go there and they would actually eat their lunch there. And they would gather the berries and they would bring them back to my grandmother, who would then, you know, can them or process them in a way. And so she has so many beautiful stories about, you know, her grandmother also. You know, what they would do is they would actually process the berries, and she would can them for pies, or she would make jams and syrups. And what they would do also is to help sustain, you know, the community around. They would actually, you know, Susan Graves, who was my great grandmother, would purchase berries, you know, from all the relatives. And so they were well renowned for purchasing berries and then processing them and canning them. So later on, what they would do is they actually would use those berries for trade later on for other things. So, you know, there's a trading system that they had used. And, you know, so that's how they would sustain life, you know, as this little one has her beautiful, beautiful life, you know, to connect with the land. And my mom said that they would just go out and, you know, for lunch, this is what they would do. They would just eat the berries. You know, she goes, we didn't have much, you know, as we know it now. But I go, Mom, I had to gently remind her, you had so much more, you know, because a lot of us are trying to go back and be gently reminded that this is how our life used to be. You know, as my grandmother had made her canning jars, I would walk down into the basement, and they used to be cellars back in the day, and they would be strewn. Her canning jars would be all over the walls. And after she had passed away, my mom said they ate for like 2 years after that, her berries, you know. So you see that, you know, with this self-sustaining and how she used to live her life, you know, she really thought that she didn't have much, you know, when she actually had so much more. So that's one of the stories that, you know, my mother had shared with me, is how her brothers and sisters, you know, from season to season, depending on what was ripe, they would walk miles actually, you know, because back in the day, they didn't have, you know, the ponies, that the motorized ponies that they have, you know, right now. And they would just, you know, go from patch to patch and bring the berries home. And that's how they had their lunch. That's how they sustained their life. And they also had come from a fishing community also. They were known for their walleye. So I just wanted to share that much with you. Miigwech.
Miigwech Apije, for taking a couple minutes to kind of see that, get you wet your whistle, quite literally. So part of what I wanted to kind of transition over to, and we're going to ask our other speakers to share with us as well, and I want to hear their stories, but I wanted to kind of wrap up part of what we're talking about by really bringing it to now, and kind of taking a minute to kind of reflect on what it looks like for us when we talk about berries, even just today. One of the conversations that I've kind of been having off and on throughout this whole season with everybody is this idea of the berries being ready, right? The berries, where are the berries? And asking that question really regularly. I've never lived in a place where I've had access to so many berries, and so the last 4 years living up in this region, there's just berries on the side of the road. You literally just pull over and start chewing on stuff, and that's so new to me. Being someone from Wisconsin, we have a lot more restricted land access, and the traditional berry patches where we would actually go and spend time in them, we were so used to having so little anyway, that coming up to a community like here at Keweenaw Bay, you know, you're like, wow, it's berry heaven up here. There's so much you can get to. There's so much you can see. And Jerry's nodding at me, and little does he know that's secretly why I moved in, but all them trees and berries and medicines up here, right? And that sage, that's right, sir. So in these last few years, you know, of course, the ideas of what climate change really is and what it looks like for such drastic changes occurring in our community is it became very apparent the impact that that could have on us in a year like this year. So we had some pretty crazy weather, I think, throughout the whole season. Winter's not quite winter anymore. Spring is a little too spring. And then summer showed up and decided that it was going to be August and July. And we were having 90-degree weathers when typically we would be looking at like 50 and raining. And so our berries really suffered this year. And part of what we wanted to have this conversation for, and why we were kind of emphasizing berries themselves, is you kind of take them for granted sometimes. I think sometimes we think about them and we consider getting our berries from the local orchard, right? Or the fact that I grow my own strawberries and I have my own blueberry bush that I bought and planted in my yard, and sometimes that's our only access to these berries. It became really apparent for me here in this space, because that's not how our farm actually our food production and what we do here on the land. That's not how it works. Our space here, we're really lucky. We've got 30 acres that we have access to, and it's beautiful. We have thimbleberries, we've got June berries, service berries, or sugar plums, Jerry calls them. We've got wild strawberries. We've got a huge raspberry patch. We've got blueberries and huckleberries that grow on the property. Not a lot, but they're here. And we even have blackberries, all just right here on this property. And so, and the choke cherries and the pin cherries, right? All of them. We're so lucky. Every day we get to go out there and kind of explore and spend time and learn that story. But part of what has been very apparent about the story this year is how little of those berries we actually have this year. They suffered, right? It was so hot that berries that are used to coming to ripen in that cooler weather, with that good sun, or with a good amount of rain coming in, they struggled so much. And so we were missing a lot of our berries this year. I think there weren't raspberries across any person that I talked to. Anywhere we stopped, there were barely any raspberries. Right now, today, the blueberries still are not ready. We have entire patches where those blueberries are just small, and they're, at this point in time, should be ripened and ready for us to pick, and they're not there. There's entire places where no blueberries came to ripen at all. They didn't even actually get berries on the plants. People didn't even see them, and that's unheard of in some of these patches. And so part of the conversation is, why is that happening? What is going on? And what is it that we're missing when we don't take the time to know that story intimately every year, or we don't get the opportunity to see that story unfurl itself as we walk, and as we're walking amongst these beings and their existence, and what is it that they're trying to tell us. I think part of what I was really realizing this year as we were watching everything unfurl is, this year it looks like I'm not going to get a lot of choke cherry, and I won't be making choke cherry jam, and we won't have sugar plums to actually add to our meals and whatnot. And at first it was kind of heartbreaking to think, wow, good thing I stocked my pantry last year, and I've got some more choke cherry mole sauce that we made last summer. I'm really grateful for that, to have thought ahead of time. But in this time of need and necessity, what does that mean for our home? And one of the stories that I think really struck me in this last week was very purposely refraining from taking any berries or cherries or anything else that's out on that land. And it happened to me because my brothers and sisters, the birds, decided to tell me and talk to me and show me a story. And I was out there and I was watching all of these beautiful creatures come and flying around and visiting and whistling and singing to me. And I was taught a long time ago, the birds are the messengers. They're the ones that bring the stories. They're the ones who bring the messages to the people in the communities. And we had this beautiful, beautiful lesson when we were working on another project. And a good friend of ours was sharing with us out in Bad River, after the floods happened and after the big flooding that happened in Bad River, and after there was, these climate change occurrences, and after all of these changes are coming through, what is it do you think that the community could have done or did do in order to revitalize some of these plants, right? And so we were talking about manumin, the good berry itself, mild rice, And that was a big part, a lot of human interaction to reseed and to check the floodwaters and to keep the integrity of the river itself, and to keep that understanding and to learn that themselves, so they could help. But our friend, he was so humble and he was so modest. One of the first things he said to us is, we forget to rely on our brothers and sisters. We forget to let the birds do their job and do their work. And we forget to acknowledge and recognize the fact that those birds are out there doing that work every day. And that story struck me this week as I was out there listening to the berries and singing along and visiting and really understanding, what does it mean when we're having this conversation and we're listening for those other beings who are participating in the storyline that we all have. And I was realizing, just looking at the variety of birds that were coming to our property and spending time in those trees, looking me right in the eye, singing right to my heart, what is it that they're doing? And for every berry that I don't take, for every cherry that I leave behind, for every creature that is coming in and being that's coming in and actually using those for themselves, that's one more seed that's going to be planted, right? That's one more being who's going to perpetuate not only her own existence momentarily, but her offspring and the babies and the stories that she's going to share with those little ones who are going to learn, here's a place where we can go where we will find the berries. And I remembered being told, if there's not enough for the beings around you, it's not for you to take. You should leave them, and you should leave a good amount of that food, because it is not just you who needs this food. It is not just you who needs to eat. And so me realizing that here we are in this place of privilege, our family, though we are not as, the kind of well-off that other people would assume, according to American values, like Kathy said, we're wealthy in a lot of different ways. We have the ability to choose not to take the berries this year, to step back from that and to allow for whatever needs to happen, the berries and the trees and the birds and the other creatures and beings in our space here. We get to step back, and we have the privilege of saying, you decide what happens this year. You are the ones who are hungry. You are the ones who are suffering. And so we will step back. We will maintain our side of a bargain that we made a long time ago. That means, we live in this place together. And so it really was uplifting, and it was really heartening to me to realize that conversation, that storyline is one not only did my grandmothers participate in, but for a millennia before me, that's the story of the people of this planet. And we don't have to forget that part of the story. We don't have to send that part of the story to the side just because mainstream America doesn't realize that maybe you leave something for the birds. So that was part of the through line that I kind of wanted to bring back to this space. I want to hear from our other guests who we asked to share with us today. And if anyone has any other questions, Chris is taking a lot of the questions over the chat, and just wanted to say thank you again to everyone for being here and sharing a little bit more with us. Miigwech Chapachi.
Miigwech. Katie, it's funny, you were talking about leaving some for nature. So I have some, plots, and I'm growing some things here in my yard, and there's strawberry just growing itself. I didn't plant it, the animals, nature planted it there. So it's funny, as you say, leaving it. I haven't been focused on the strawberries. I focused on the kale and everything else I'm growing. But the strawberries, I'm just leaving them there, in a few days, there's these little berries, and some days later they're gone. So I'm the birds and squirrels and whatever else is enjoying them. Whereas, and they're leaving the kale and the tomatoes and everything else alone. So that's awesome. Yeah. Hey, anybody out there with any berry stories, feel free to, chime in, maybe, drop something in the chat here and we can address them, or maybe even unmute your mic. But thanks, definitely for sharing. That also makes me think about misinformation, we get about, what's around us. As a child, I was always told that mulberries were poisonous, don't eat the berries from those trees. That's where they're falling on the ground and they're messing up stuff. And then in my 20s, I learned that those berries are not poisonous. Those are mulberries, and those are some of the most awesome berries ever. So, hey, let's keep dispelling those myths and stay curious out there, everybody. Yeah, anybody got any berry stories you want to share out there? Feel free to raise your hand or kind of chime in. But Katie, I hope you're able to maybe can some stuff or jar some stuff for us so we can, when we do get up there, we're able to partake a little bit. Yes, because we are definitely planning on coming that way. Let's see here. I'm losing sound here. I'm gonna have to do a couple things here and change up something. So I'm gonna step back and mute this.
Chris, while you're doing that, should we ask like if Ajay wants to share a little bit? You said mulberries, and I know Ajay had some mulberry pictures in there.
Sure, I'm happy to share.
Okay.
Hello again. For those of you who was a little late coming in, my name is Ajay Witherspoon. I was an education specialist with the Detroit Zoo, and I met Garrett and the entire Sierra Club family when I was planning a camping experience for my interns. So this internship that I run is for 16 to 19-year-old Detroit youth. And it's an opportunity for them to learn job readiness skills as well as get outside and reconnect with nature. What's really cool about this program is you don't have to have any experience. You don't even have to like being outside to join. But I have never had an intern that did not have a great time in the natural spaces that we visited. So Sky Hollow is very, very important to me. I had interns come here, help with the trail system. It literally feels like home, and it's the only campsite in Detroit, so it's very near and dear to my heart. And last summer, I got these really, really strong and very smart interns, and they really have a desire to do good things in the world. And that's going to play into a little bit of the later part of the story. But while at Scout Hollow, we were learning, or the interns were learning how to pitch their tents and camp sustainably. And as they're learning, I'm sitting under a mulberry tree, and I'm just picking them and eating them. And all the interns are looking at me like I'm crazy, and they're asking like, "What am I eating?" I said, "Mulberry, you gotta have some of these." And they all turned their faces up, like nobody wanted to touch them. The berries weren't washed, and how can you eat something right off of a tree? So I didn't press them, I didn't force them to. So as their lesson is going on, I'm still just picking berries. And the intern, Gary, yep, can you go to the 0519? Go down one more. Yep, right there. Perfect. He was the person, like he would not eat any of them. But as you can see, he's picking them up and he's just popping them in his mouth. And they swear that these have to be fake berries because they were so sweet and they were so good. So by the end of this trip, and we were only out there for a couple of hours, everyone's hands are stained and everyone is walking away with a full belly. Their lunches weren't even ate because they've eaten so much of the mulberries. And what was really interesting is in this week particularly, we were talking about reconnecting with our food and how far removed that we are from it. So the fact that they were not willing to eat berries that haven't been washed and straight from a tree, and to see that they're going home with handfuls of berries, that was really rewarding. But also we had really good conversations about access to sustainable foods too. One of my interns who he's in architecture, that's his passion. He actually wants to go into zoning now in urban planning to help kind of reconfigure cities to make them more nature friendly and more green. And we had a really good conversation about how there are some cities around the U.S. who wants to plant fruit-bearing trees on city sidewalks so that there's a fruit source for the homeless. And he was so excited to possibly do something like that in his own community, which is amazing. The fact that he's getting out in nature, that he's going into a career that he loves, and he can bring some of the things that he's learned in this program as well. And then we also went into how berries and flowering trees, how pollinators all played into it. So we're having these great conversations on top of each other. And we also had an opportunity for the interns to learn beekeeping too. So how do we kind of close that circle? So we help care for the bees. They help provide berries for us through pollination. So they at the Bailout Nature Center, we actually have hives. So I am a beekeeper as well. And we actually let some of our interns suit up and extract their own, I call them slides, but their own frames of honey. And they actually spun their own honey and jarred it. And when I say, like, these kids went crazy, like for some of them not to be even outside or only have their backyards to explore, to be able to access berries in a natural setting within a huge city was really inspiring. And the fact that they keep coming back and they keep wanting to work for me is really great too. These are my babies. Yeah. Oh, and I see Mama Raven said that she had these types of berries. Yeah, I'm not sure on their distribution, but I know that they're very common in the Midwest. And at least like what Chris was saying too, I grew up thinking that mulberries were poisonous, and we weren't supposed to eat them. So that kind of reclaim that education and figure out, okay, are these poisonous? Or are these actually things that I could eat? And that journey as well has really been valuable too. And to be able to pass that on to this youth, it's been really, really amazing.
That's totally awesome, and it's great that he's able to participate in, you know, some planting of trees.
Mm-hmm.
To that, it's like a
Hey,
win-win.
if I could just jump in real quick, I just want to appreciate Ajay for the work she does, bringing those young people. I mean, exposing them to so many different things. But when they go down to Scout Hollow and camp, I love every group that goes in and camps at Scout Hollow to have that experience in Rouge Park in Detroit. But there was always so much joy with your cohort when you all are down there on the day visits and camping overnight. Whenever I see these pictures or I see videos of your time there, like that's the word that I think of is joy, because there's it's always such a great energy with your cohort. So appreciate you making that possible for them, Ajay.
Well, absolutely, and I know the interns loved it as well. They still talk about Garrett. They still talk about Scout Hollow. Some of them have been in the Rouge Park system, the park system, and they ride past like the stairs to come down, and they get a little weepy because it's Scout Hollow, and this natural space has really been life-changing for some of them. A few of my interns were going through some traumatic events. One of them actually just got out of a house fire, and being in Scout Hollow and just sitting under that tree was so healing for him, and it has done more for him than not. I love therapy, and I think it's one of the best things and something that everyone should participate in. But having that session with nature instead of a therapist was extremely beneficial for him. His words, not mine.
Well, thanks for sharing, Ajay.
So they are a great bunch of youth. Hey, Mama Raven, you were sharing some interesting things in the chat there. Can we get you to maybe come live and share some of those? There's a piece here you talked about having every type of berry.
I'm gonna put you on mute, Mama Raven. Your video. I'm gonna put your video on mute so we can hear everything that you're saying.
Especially this cobbler you speak of as well.
And then Mama Raven, I think you gotta press one. I think you gotta take yourself off mute there.
We may have
Mama Raven, you should have like maybe there you go.
There she is.
There I go. Okay. I remember back in the 50s, my grandmother used to make this cobbler, and I mean it's this big sheet cake pan that she would have. She would put like blueberries, mulberries, boysenberries, strawberries, And she put peaches in it now because it started with the peach cobbler. So she decided to make it a peach cobbler berry pie. And she would, after she would make it, then she would take a knife and run it across, and all the berry juices would just run down together. So she started to call it berry rundown cobbler. And we would have this like every Sunday with sweet potato pie. It was a choice. You had one or the other. I always chose the berries because my favorite berry is boysenberry. Can you still hear me? Oh, okay. And so that's basically what happened with the blueberry, the rundown berry pie, as she called it, cobbler pie.
I was wondering what that was, so now I see how it came together because it runs down.
It just runs down and all those different juices and flavors together. Oh, I miss my grandmother's pie. Yeah, so, and I make it now, but I don't make it with 7 different berries. I just maybe use three different berries.
Okay. We'll have to collaborate.
And usually on our herbal walk, there's always berries on everywhere we do our herbal walk and talk. So we test out the berries along our way on our journey.
Nice.
Okay. Anything else you want to know about the rundown cobbler?
When you making it next? That's what I want to know.
I knew that was gonna come up. Well, right now I have a big bowl of blueberries. I'll make one soon. Soon as I come over to Palmer Park, I'll bring one then. Awesome. Next week.
Yes.
I'm eating blueberries now. Yeah, I'll bring it. I'll bring blueberries and strawberries and something else. I don't know.
Great. I look forward to
Thanks for sharing, Mama Raven. I'm gonna put your camera back on. I'm gonna turn your camera back on so everyone can get hungry watching you eating your blueberries.
Okay, I'll stop eating my berries.
Right, well,
no, I'm gonna put them away.
Well, Mama Raven's over there eating berries.
That was a nice.
And hey, Baba Kundaja, can we get you to chime in and share a story or 3?
Sure.
Yum.
Yummy. Pop another one in my mouth.
Okay, so I obviously have the am I still on mute?
Nope, you're good.
We can hear you.
No, we can hear you.
I obviously have the toughest job of the night. I have to follow the rundown cobbler. So nothing I can say is going to live up to the rundown cobbler, but I'll try anyway. One of the reasons I was excited to participate in this round table, gathering of minds and spirits is because Chris asked me if I had any stories that I wanted to tell as it related to berries. He would say, hey, can you give us some information, or can you tell us about berries that grow in Michigan or whatnot. He said, do you have any stories to tell? And I do have a personal story and journey to tell. I just want to say before I get into my berry story, how I love the energy in this whole group. You have a lot of people here who are speaking to our connectedness with the plant world and the plant life, the plant beings. And I just love to be part of something like this. One of the inspirations for me to go down the path that I've been on with learning about plants and learning from plants, I should say, started with the seed of my grandmother, as probably a lot of us did. Mama Raven, I think, mentioned that as well. Mine was a little bit different because my grandmother was very territorial about her garden and especially her rose bush. I have stories to tell. I could tell about her rose bush if we got too close to it. But having that seed planted of every year, seeing what bloomed in a garden and being able to eat off the grapevine, and, seeing what came up in the garden every year, and eventually, decade, 2 decades later, being inspired, to get into initially urban gardening, food security, And one of the things that inspired me is, I'm by trade a mathematician engineer. So I study science a lot. I also study the contributions of African people to science a lot, which of course, leads you directly to one of our great botanists, George Washington Carver. And one of the things he said, he's always been known for saying he communicated, he liked to communicate with plants. And he said something to the effect of, I don't remember the exact quote, but anything will give up their secrets if you love it enough. So he tries to, talk to, whether it's the sweet potato or the peanut, he tries to talk to it. And if he loves it enough, it will give up his secrets to them. And he said, the same thing is true with people. People will, give up their secrets and communicate with you what you need from them if you love them enough. So I have taken that to heart and have used that as kind of a guiding inspiration in my quest to become, to learn more from the plants and not learn more about the plants. So that journey eventually led me to Peru, and I was talking to a couple of the native shaman there in Peru, and we were talking about communicating with plants. And he echoed the same thing without knowing who George Washington Carver was, of course. But he said that, the way he got into it was he was out on the Amazon River and he was stranded. He had got an infection in his leg, and he was able to talk to the plants and basically get the remedy that he needed from the plant. They were like, go and see this guy over here. He has what you need. This guy, meaning, this plant over here and that plant over there, and mix a little bit of this over here, and, get what you need. And that led him to a journey of discovery, with the plant. So I'm saying all that to say my story, my personal story with the plants. Back in January, I suffered a concussion while I was on a job, freak accident. But during that journey to recover from, the concussion and try to make sure that, I got back to where I needed to get to in terms of, cognitively and physically back to where I needed to. I was on a strict regimen where I could only have like maybe 10 minutes of screen time a day because of, light sensitivity and that kind of thing. My doctor or my neurologist was, total Western science, doctor, not knowledgeable or open to anything else except for, what he knew. And that wasn't really working for me. His diagnosis usually revolved around, a drug, a pill. And if it wasn't working, maybe take two. And if that wasn't working, we'll switch it up and take this one. But I knew myself. I knew that I wasn't progressing and, getting as well as I should. So being a, practitioner of natural healing, I took my little bit of limited screen time and started looking into natural methods of helping to protect and repair my brain. Concussion is clinically a traumatic brain injury. It's what the definition, clinical definition of it is. So I started looking into natural methods of, natural ways of healing and protecting the brain, which led me directly to berries, specifically blueberries, mulberries, raspberries, but blueberries are kind of at the top of the list because they contain a few compounds that are very strong in both neuroprotection, so protecting the brain, and neurogenesis, which is helping the brain rebuild, those neural connections. So my diet from January to maybe the end of March consisted in a large part of blueberries. I wish I had known about Mama Raven's rundown cobbler then, because it would have been a staple in my house. But right. But the science behind, as I said, my background is science, so I delve into the natural and the spiritual connection with plants, but also delve into the scientific background of those, because they are not separate. Boom, there we go. Thanks, Chris. You just posted something in the chat about blueberries and health. So researching the berries and brain health and natural natural supplements and natural foods that you can take to help with that. Of course, like I said, led me to blueberries. So through my tremendous increase in my blueberry intake over that time, what the neurologist was giving me and helping me with in terms of the pain, migraines, and things like that, coupled with the blueberries. And I actually have a mulberry tree in my yard. This is just not the year that it produces, so I didn't have any mulberries this year. But that helped me tremendously with being able to help regain, my cognitive stamina, my cognitive abilities, and whatnot. Enhanced brain blood flow. So another post. So yeah, blueberries was something that was at the top of my list because of its. One of the things I like to do is in studying is not just study what people are saying. I like to study clinical trials, peer-reviewed data if I can, and also cultural use and knowledge. I think 5,000 years of Ojibwe history or of Zulu usage, to me, is a great indicator of something that's working, especially if you have cultures in different areas using the same thing, the same plant for the same usage. So if you have somebody in what's now the Western United States using a berry or a plant for the same thing that somebody in Eastern Africa is using it for, two totally disconnected cultures, and they have been using it for thousands of years, there's a pretty good chance that there's some ancestral science that ties that together. So, being, looking into that and finding blueberries were, the power of blueberries, I use that, personally to help me out. And I also, just like Chris is doing in the chat here, one of the things I always do is I try to share any knowledge that I get with other people, be it a coworker, family member, or, friend, whoever. As the old saying goes, each one teach one. We're kind of in a day and age where it's like each one teach 100, but the same scenario, goes that when you get a piece of knowledge that helps you, share it with somebody so that it may help them. And to speak briefly on mulberries, I know a lot of people here probably have experience and knowledge of mulberries, but I just want to share, there's just the power of mulberries. Mulberries are extremely high in vitamin C, antioxidants. They're also delicious, which helps a lot as well. I made about 2 gallons of mulberries one year from the mulberry tree in my yard. It's fantastic. Mulberries, red mulberries, are native to northern United States, kind of the midpoint of Michigan on down. So red mulberries are native. White mulberries are considered an invasive species. I don't really like that term. You know, they can do damage. Invasive species are usually species that are extremely hardy. So they know how to grow, propagate, and keep themselves from being, you know, taken out either by weeds or by man-made intervention. But white mulberries are all across the United States and all over the world, really. Wherever they lay their hat is their home for white mulberries. But red mulberries are a native plant here in Michigan. You see them all around. I think Katie mentioned, you know, coming to Michigan and seeing berries just everywhere on the side of the road. They're in vacant lots. They're probably in your backyard. And as someone else mentioned about, I think it was Katie may have mentioned this as well. The birds do a good job of spreading the mulberry around. One of the things that I used to do when I ran a gardening club for youth is we would study how seeds propagate, and then we would get to the part where, you know, we show a cartoon of a bird eating a seed and then pooping it out, and the kids would go, oh! But it gave them, you know, the idea or the knowledge that this is how, you know, these things spread and travel. You know, it's many different ways that they travel. Birds, you know, spread them around some. The dandelion has a magnificent way of spreading itself around through its, puffball of seeds that take off in the air. So nature is a magnificent thing, and we can learn from it. We can be healed by it, and it can learn from us as well. So I try to learn from my garden, as Chris was talking about, strawberries that came up that he didn't plant. I've had lemon balm come up, had red and white clover come up. I've had mint come up, had all kind of things that come up. And I usually take it as a sign that either I or somebody I know needs that herb in their life. So if it's something I'm not familiar with, I'll study it to better understand its properties. I'll talk to it. And then, I internalize that, and chances are myself or somebody I know is going through something where that knowledge, that herb could benefit them. So that's my berry stories that I want to share with everybody, with everyone. It's important that we share, knowledge when we talk about medicinal plants and herbs, in addition to the Western medicine, that we share the knowledge of these things that are and can actually, heal us. That's the torch. Berries are very good at helping to regulate blood sugar. In the African American community, diabetes is running rampant. It's extremely high. So mulberries helps to regulate blood sugar. But a great diet, a better diet helps to regulate it even more than mulberries. But add a little mulberry to your diet, a little blueberry to your diet, and your body will thank you. Natural mulberries and blueberries, not juice unless you're, making a natural juice yourself, because it's a little bit too concentrated for us, and it can cause spikes and different things. So raising blueberries and mulberries, like Katie showed in her video, is a wonderful thing. And grazing and foraging is also one way we can reconnect with, the nature, actually being, getting down and dirty with, with nature. So Sante Sana to everybody for allowing me to speak. Torch is passed.
Sante Sana, Baba. Thanks for sharing. Hey, anybody else in the Zoom tonight have any berry stories that you'd like to share? Yeah. So as you hear these things, and of course we are in the information age, so search, find information, share, identify plants, talk to them. Yes, Mama Raven.
I don't know if anybody else has heard this, but I remember my grandfather telling me that watermelon was a berry, and a few other things that I haven't heard anybody else discuss as far as what a berry is or how to really define what a berry is. But I remember when he used to cut up the watermelons, he would say, this is part of the berry family, or any fruits that we would eat, he would always tell us that this is also a berry.
Hmm.
Has anyone else ever heard that before?
Am I still muted?
No, you're live and direct.
Okay. Yeah, technically, it's like, it's one of those things, like, you know, people learn that tomatoes are fruit, it's actually a fruit. But yeah, technically the watermelon is in the berry family. So yeah, your grandfather was 100% on point.
Hmm. Okay. I hadn't heard that. So.
But is there a way to, do you know exactly how you define what a berry is? I heard there were 3 components to what defines a berry.
You know, I'm looking at that now, and so I'm finding some interesting
Someone told
things.
me the berry has to come from a flower. It has to have a flower. I believe a flower. I'm trying to remember what Grandpa told me. A flower. It has to have more than 2 seeds, and it has to have an ovary.
Because it's funny, now that I'm researching this, I'm seeing something that pops up that says strawberries are not berries. I'm like, okay. So this is going to pose an interesting point of research.
Strawberries are not berries, always been included.
Yeah, I can't answer that one. And is there anyone in the Zoom that can touch that? What defines a berry? Webster here. That did not help.
And I think the only reason that came up in the conversation when we were children is because when you eat a watermelon, you know there's a million seeds in it, right? So we were complaining about the seeds, and that's when he said, "Oh, hush up. It's just like eating berries." And so everybody was like stunned at what he said, that a watermelon was a berry.
Okay, so I clicked on the one here that says strawberries are not berries, yet avocados and watermelon are. Okay, this is interesting. I'm going to share this in the chat for the fun of it.
A banana was supposed to be a berry.
Can you hear us over here?
Yes.
So it's dinner time in the household up there.
We were just, oh no, I just made dinner while y'all were visiting. I'm not gonna joke. This is how we do stuff, right? This is our contribution to the berries. So I have lots of really cool recipe books around, and I had kind of prepped some of this ahead of time because I knew where we come from, we always share food when we have someone come visit. So I told Kathy, I said, will you come share stories and I'll cook your dinner.
So what'd you make there?
So this is manuman, and we were just joking about how you guys are so technical. It was just sweet. You said, oh man, they're real technical over there. Manuman literally means the good berry, and that's what we call rice, wild rice. So that's one berry that we would share and experience. And in this specific meal, we have a couple berries. I made them. Let's see if I can get you a nice shot on the spoon. Can you guys see that right there? Is that for you? So that's manuman, the wild rice in there. The blueberries that you saw actually picked yesterday. You saw them in the videos. There's thimbleberries in there. I don't know if you saw on that last picture that thimbleberry, that bright red berry. Almost thimbleberry.
Thimbleberry.
We can probably, we'll share the photo of it really quick, so you can see it again. All of those together, and we're again. So there's let's see, we'll share screen, and we'll show you this one. So that's what the thimbleberry looks like. That's one that's its home territory is up this way, and supposedly in Canada. Also, they have thimbleberries up there. I myself have never seen them up here, and we were actually looking for the name for thimbleberry in Ojibwe last week as we were preparing for this, so we could talk about that berry, and I couldn't even find a word for it in the People's Dictionary or in some of the other places. I found one word in Bishop Baraga's original dictionary from when he first came here in the 1700s, when he first, Bishop Baraga is an important figure in terms of the community here. He was a Jesuit priest who came and spent time, and he recorded a significant amount of our language. And he's one of the reasons that we have so much language actually to this day, is because when he came, he was so invested in learning that language piece of it. He actually did a fair amount of recording. And I found one term that potentially could mean thimbleberry. And the word itself was a small, indescript red berry, was actually what it was called. And so I think that's kind of the closest to the berry, that term that we had. But in what we're kind of visiting and sharing with here, we have that manumin, that good berry. We have those thimbleberries that we just showed you on the screen. We've got blueberries from on the lakeshore we picked yesterday. I have some green onions from our garden, and we sweeten actually a lot of our foods. A lot of folks will use salt, but as Anishinaabe people, one of our first, the first foods that we use for actually keeping our food good was sugar, maple sugar, and we shared that with folks on our last community meeting. And so this actually has maple vinegar and maple sugar in it. And then I have a little bit of salt, and I use some of those good imported foods, some toasted sesame oil and olive oil. And then I have fresh mint from in the backyard here too. And I kind of brought together a recipe book. I have this really beautiful recipe book. And where did you hand me that book that's in there? I think I have it in there. Modified it. It's called Original Local. So here's the actual book itself. I don't know if you guys can see that or if it's backwards on your screen. But Original Local, it's Indigenous food stories and recipes from the Upper Midwest. It's written by Heidi Erdrich. So this is the book that I kind of pulled this out of, and it was just a something that came together so that I just kind of found, and it called for quinoa, and it called for all these other things. I said, oh, I don't have any of that stuff, but I have all this good berries, because they wanted cranberries in there, and they wanted some gooseberries, and I didn't have any of those things, but I remembered, you know, these salads, the way that we bring these foods together, this is a very typical time period to have those berries and rice and fish. I'm called to have smoked fish in it, and I don't have any smoked fish in my house, so we're kind of making do on the vegetarian end of it, but yeah, that's right. Listening to your stories, making dinner.
So you said there's salt in there. Is there the leek salt, or is it just?
I did not. I cooked all my leek salt when I fed you.
Okay.
We have wild onions up here. People call them leeks or wild ramps.
Right.
And our family makes a leek salt out of the leaves. We'll dehydrate the leaves, and then we grind them all down, and then we grind them up with the pink Himalayan salts, and we use that as an actual leek salt, and we'll just sprinkle it kind of on everything. But we've been sharing so much of that we ourselves don't have any more at the house anymore. But
make us move up there.
I know, that's the point. I'm just tempting everyone. Come to the land. Come be Ojibwe with us. We love it.
I want to come.
Hey, come up.
Right.
We need
Jerry
you.
won't let me be his roommate, so.
Yes, we need your stories. We brought T, and Chris and Garrett got to come spend some time with us. You know,
Don't leave Mama Raven.
Come on, Mama Raven. We need your stories. You have to come visit.
I was just up there 3 weeks ago. I was just up there 3 weeks ago at Lake Michigan, Lake Superior.
Oh my goodness, where did you visit?
That was a day trip.
Oh. You have to spend a week to come and visit us and spend time with our berries and our rice and our fish.
I shall remember that.
Yes, absolutely. Now Chris knows how to get up here, so you can't hide from anyone.
Yeah. So we'll start sharing that.
Yeah.
See the walls.
Well, Miigwech Chakwaji, We really appreciate folks like being able to be on here. I don't know if anyone has any more questions or anything that else they want to directly contribute to more of this conversation. Kathy was sharing with us how she was listening to your story when you shared about the mulberry trees and how folks, you know, the seeds would drop, and how there's hybrids now in some of these communities where they're making these trees without berries dropping on them because it makes the ground dirty, and then there's bird poop out there. And you know, these kinds of stories are so important to share so that we can remember that there's a reason why all of these are out there for us to share and participate in. And well,
sometimes we have to, you know, speak for our plant nation, our plant relatives, you know, because we have so many good medicines, you know. This medium, this food also is healing in a way, especially our berries, you know, because we have to have that good medicine, you know, within us to be able to sustain our life and that good energy. But you know, what I found is, like, even when I see a logging truck, you know, Michigan is notorious for clear cutting out here. And so somebody has to speak, you know, for those medicines, you know, because they don't understand, you know, those plant relatives, you know. And this is where Jerry was speaking from when he was a forester, how, you know, he was trying to give that voice, you know, for the matig, for the trees. But, you know, they don't realize that, you know, a lot of our plants are medicinal, you know, like the strawberry, you know, the leaf, it's actually a heart medicine, you know. So that's what a lot of people don't understand is, you know, they're disconnected in a way. It's like they don't understand. They just need to be gently reminded that, you know, our berries, our plants, they are, you know, medicine. Also, you know, like the blueberries, they have, you know, medicinal purpose. We also have what we call soap berries here up on Keweenaw. Those are called buffalo berries. They used to use those to make indigenous ice cream. So what they do, they whip them up, you know, and then they become a foam, and then they add the odorman, the strawberries, to kind of sweeten it. And so that's what they call indigenous icy cream. And so, you know, with the Keweenaw, we've been so lucky here in the UP to where, oh my goodness, where Katie comes from, they have so many berries over there, strawberries. They're actually 2 weeks ahead of where we are here in the Keweenaw. So what I would do is I'd travel over to where Katie's from, to Bayfield, and they're also notorious for their apple trees later on in the fall time. I would go over there, pick berries, and I was like, oh, I got 2 weeks, you know, and I can go back and get some more when the berries are ripe here, you know. So it's being able to share this time and space, you know, with being able to travel in our motorized ponies, you know, we're able to kind of double dip in a way too, you know. So, and I also had the opportunity to sit out in one of our restoration sites for about 2 weeks. Or 2 months actually. So June 1st, we did plant restoration in this site, which was deemed a brownfield site called Sandpoint. What happened there was we had a lot of copper mining. So there's a lot of legacy mining in our area to where there's stamp sand now in Gitchigumi, Lake Superior. And what happened was the sand had traveled from 4 miles up in this little town called Keweenaw and traveled 4 miles down the coast to where the tribe actually has land, to where it was the stamp sand just covered everything. Later on, the tribe actually had acquired some grants and they were able to put a cap out there. And so with that, that's where our plant restoration comes in. So there was a lot of strawberries out there this year. It was just beautiful. You know, I was out there eating it right off the cap. And, you know, to be able to appreciate that and watch them bloom and watch them flower and turn into this good medicine. The blueberries, in fact, oh my gosh, they just bloomed everywhere. You know, we actually have a lot of crop wild relatives, you know, for especially our blueberries. You know, those plant relatives, we actually get the genetic version of all the blueberries across, you know, Turtle Island. That if something happens to our relatives here, we would actually lose that genetic value of our plant here. So that's what, you know, we have a lot of hybridization, and plus we have a lot of invasive species now that are happening. So one of our partners that we work with is Michigan Tech. We have the spotted wind Dropsophilia, which comes from California, and it's brought here because of, you know, some of the foods that, you know, some of our grocery stores sell, or some of the outside farmers markets have. We have an area here where, you know, this fruit and these vegetables come in, and they brought in this spotted wing Dropsophilia, which actually goes into our berries. So that's what we have been working on as a tribe, is trying to do some research, you know, to where they're actually going in, they're laying their larvae into our berries. It really affects the raspberries here, and actually our blackberries, you know. So what happened was, I have a story. I have 20 acres here on the other side of the bay, on the Berga side. So we have, you know, our bear relatives had come and dropped those plants, you know, the seed in my yard. So I have 3 areas of blackberries now, to where we go out and my mother will harvest them. And she actually had brought some in, and then she put them in the refrigerator, but then she put them out to come to room temperature. And I happened to walk by. I was like, Mom, I go, what's these wiggly things in those berries? You know, and I didn't understand it. This happened about two years ago. And now I understand what they were. They were the spotted wing Dropsophilia. So, you know, those are some things that we have to be aware of. You know, sometimes we, you know, have good intentions when we do bring, you know, fruits and vegetables from the outside, to where now in our area, it's threatened by this invasive species. You know, so sometimes we have to, you know, think about our traditions and our teachings and saying, what is this trying to teach us? Instead of saying, why is this happening to us? What is this trying to teach us? You know, like when I was sitting out there on the cap and I'm observing, you know, the blueberries coming into bloom, and then we actually had a frost here in June, which is, you know, I've heard of it happening before, but actually to observe it, and where it really affected a lot of our flowers this year for many of our berries and our matig, our apple trees. So, you know, with that, and then 2 weeks later, then we had heat for 2 weeks, where it was actually in the high 80s and low 90s, which is not really heard of here, because I had to actually go out and take a water tank, you know, on a little gator, and actually try to water our plant relatives so they can go to seed, you know, for our restoration site. So we must be mindful, you know, so when we do sit with our plant relatives, you know, we have to be understanding to be able to understand why these things are happening. You know, so when the frost came and was very detrimental to our blueberries, but then, you know, some of them did survive because we are near the water, right there on the lakeshore of Gitchigumi. And so with that, you know, those berries actually became green, where on the inland areas, we didn't have any in the Berga Plains, where, you know, my ancestors have traveled many winters ago to actually go and harvest. You know, to when I was a small girl, we used to go out to the Berga Plains, which is a drier area, to where there's berries everywhere, you know, but this year there's none. There's also another area called the Yellow Dog Plains. There's none. So there was some small areas where, you know, some of our elders go to where they're kind of hidden, like a Sinnons in our area, to where some of the relatives were able to go and actually pick a few, you know. But when Katie was sharing her story, even further north, their berries are just now ripening. So they're really affected by that frost, you know. So the areas, you know, play a big part of it, especially, you know, being around the waters and being able to sit here and observe and to share this with you, you know, how observant, you know, I became when I became connected back to our plant relatives. I spent the last year and a half sitting in a desk, to where now with the COVID and the pandemic, I like the bay. I'm not forced to go outside and sit with that plant nation, you know, but, you know, to be able to observe these things and to share it with you, you know, how the climate is actually affecting everything, and how people do move, you know, those invasives in to really, to the point to where, oh my goodness, now it's affecting our berries. You know, so we must be mindful, and to be able to speak, you know, for our plant relatives is very important too, you know, because I know one other lady here, she had talked about how when we sit out there, you know, and understand how healing it can be, you know, to sit with our relatives, to sit with our berries, you know, and we remember our stories, you know, to why they're here, you know, each one has a different story, which, you know, I'm sure Katie, you know, probably is resonating with one right now. But it's just an honor to be able to sit here and share that with you. So miigwech.
Yes, yes. Talking for those without a voice. That is awesome. Those connections and being out. Like you want to say something there, Katie?
Yeah, I think the last little bit that I would add to kind of all of that is just a thought on what does it mean in when we take this back, us as people doing this kind of work, and when we start taking the steps to walk in this land again, what stories we'll bring forward. I'm reminded of the fact that, you know, those places where we talk about those blueberries not coming back, another thing that hasn't been happening out in those spaces is we haven't had our traditional fires. And so part of what I think a lot of the work that I know Kathy and her crew works on, and I'm sure a lot of the stuff that you all do in your home there, is really reevaluating what does it mean to be a part of the land, and what does it mean to actively engage and participate in that land, and what is it that land is asking for? What is the land calling for? And what are the birds and the berries and the fish? What are they asking? They take the time to tell you what it is they need. They take the time to let you know that there are things that need to come forward. And they'll tell you very distinctly. We just forget, and Jerry brings this up all the time, right? We always have teachers out there. We are just the students who refuse to show up for class. We don't spend our time out in that land, and we don't take that experience, that opportunity. There's that other level and layer of it too, right? Where we are forced to lock our children up into these buildings and keep them away from that original, those teachings that we all have that inherent right to participate in. And what does that mean then to start taking those children back and start bringing them back into those spaces? We're so lucky we get to do that work and bring our children with us on a daily basis, but that's not the truth for so many people. And so what happens as a result of that, you know, how can you listen to the birds and the berries, and how do you know what fire has to tell you, and how do you know what that frost was trying to teach you, or those invasives, as they call, we use the term, Kundaja, I heard you say, you know, you're not a big fan of that term, invasive species. We in the work we've been doing have talked about them being the beings who are from another space, right? So ones who come from a place of another, or who come from a different space and are here now. And what does that mean, right? Because there's, Kathy, that story we always are told that, especially as Anishinaabe people, we've had so many people coming to this area, right? And for us, there are so many visitors. We have so many new faces, including, you know, that little bitty fly that showed up with those berries. And what is it that story has to share? And why is it that we should be listening to that story now and in this day? And so I think that's part of why the intentions that we had in bringing this forward and asking you all to come and participate with us, and just kind of reiterating that come and see us, come spend time, come share your stories, come be with us. We're going to do our best to come and be with you, as well as we hope to continue this kind of conversation. And my partner Jerry and I, we do our best to get down to Detroit at least a couple times a year, but we've been kind of, you know, not allowed to come spend time with you guys recently, and we look really forward to spending more of these times around the fire and around that circle, sharing a meal. I'll come cook for you guys. Chris and Garrett know what'll happen if I come throw down on that fireplace for you. And our friend Kathy, she'll come with us too, and we hope to see your faces here and hear those heart stories and fill you up and bring you that good medicine. Kundaja, I love what you were sharing with us about the just eating, right? Like, part of bringing those berries out is the fact that who doesn't want to pop a berry in their mouth, right? Like, who won't share that story when you get to like share that meal together and we get to have that conversation? And that's been so much a part of why we brought these specific conversations forward, right? I can't help but make you love me when I feed you my maple sugar. It's so sweet and fantastic. And
Yes, we look forward to getting there, and as things change,
Yes,
including more people.
Yes.
That's a big part of it. And I just wanted to say thank you so much for what you shared and for this opportunity to walk forward in these conversations. And that's kind of what I think I have over here. If there's anything else that to wrap all this up for. We're gonna eat more manumin.
Right. Wish I was close by to stop and get some.
Yeah, we shouldn't keep you from eating that manumin. I am really glad that Mama Raven was able to meet y'all, because I can't remember how long ago it was, but it was shortly after I bought the first sort of batch of manumin from Jerry, and Mama Raven's like, "Oh, you need to tell me how I can meet those people and get some of that wild rice."
Yes, I want to do that. Yeah, I got some wild rice when I was up at the UP, though. I did get some.
All right. Cool. Well, I appreciate everybody sharing stories from also multiple generations. I've heard like when the story starts with a memory from a grandparent. I appreciate like that. I'm hearing you share something, knowledge and just relationships that go way back. So I really value just everybody's presence here in this space, but also the presence of very special people and your ancestors that you're bringing into this story, and so miigwech to all of you for everything you shared. So thank you very much.
Okay. Keep eating those berries.
Yep,
Those
good brain
Good for radiation therapy.
Right.
I see Jerry's on here. I don't know if Jerry wants to say anything.
I'm driving down a mountain right now, and I actually have a little bit of service. I don't know if you guys can see this or not.
Oh,
Oh
wow.
man, that's beautiful. Yeah. Are you going
So
to?
I got to concentrate on that a little bit, and I know my service has been going in and out. I've been having to drive, but I'm definitely thankful as well for everyone taking their precious time and sharing with everyone. And one of the things that I'm always a big advocate for is responsible harvesting as well. I don't know if you guys had talked about that, but I think that's a really big part of the conversation as well. Is berries are amazing and they're great, but how do we harvest them in a good way to ensure that our bird relatives and our bear relatives and everything else that relies on those foods also get a chance at it. It's almost selfish of us sometimes when we find a good berry patch to just go hard, and sometimes we got to use a little self-restraint and pause for a moment and reflect on all the other beings that are out there that are reliant upon those foods as well, for medicine and sustenance too. So that's really just one of the things I always try to advocate for is we've got amazing foods around here, but we also have to remember how to care for them at the same time. And sometimes that means leaving a lot, or like Katie had mentioned earlier, you've had a bad berry season this year, and we had to really start thinking about the birds, and maybe we're going to pass on these berries this year so that they can take care of their families because we're okay right now. So I hope that's something that is on everyone's mind as well when they start talking about harvesting these good foods, is remembering everything else that's out there. We're not the center of the universe, we're just a part of it. Even when we do harvest berries, I'll reach my hand in there and try to get some, and I take inspect it, and if there's a bug that's on there sucking some juice out, I'll leave it. Say, okay, you need that more than I do. So that's just one of the things to remember. Just remember our place in the grand scheme of things, and hopefully all of you can help us take care of this amazing place we call home. So that's it. I might lose service, and I'm on a really bumpy road right now too. But miigwech, thank you guys so much. My heart goes out to all of you guys, even though I'm way out in California. And I can't wait to kick it again with all of y'all. So miigwech.
Thanks for sharing that thought.
Miigwech.
Yes, and be safe. All right, everybody. Well, thanks for joining in. And let's see, any parting words there, Garrett?
No, I just appreciate everybody, you know, being in this space. I'm looking forward to Jeff. I see you there too. I'm pointing to the part of the screen where Jeff is. It's like, Jeff, thanks for joining us too, man. I'm looking forward to us gathering again and talking about the rice harvest. Maybe that's what we can talk about ricing next time.
Yes, yes. Unfortunately, the party has to end.
Yeah. But that just means I look forward to the next time, and I hope we can all gather again and keep this conversation going.
Me and Great Chapaji for all of your hard work and everything you all are doing. I can't wait to feed you and hold you and see you and bring you medicines. Spend that good, wonderful time together. And filling up, and that's what we need in this day and age. So thank you for all your beautiful work that you continuously do down there. We really appreciate it.
Till the next time we come together.
All right.
Me, Great Chapaji.
Peace, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Thank you.